Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Graham Noble, Jeff Charles, and Scott Cosenza. And this is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. Texas Governor Greg Abbott's immigration practices have the open borders crowd outraged. It started with his pledge last spring to continue building the wall on the southern border, followed by an increase in the presence of state law enforcement and the National Guard to help curb illegal crossings. But the good governor has upped his game by busing the undocumented folks to the nation's capital in the Big Apple. The mayors of these two cities are calling the 2,000 or so folks a surge. Really? Jeff Charles is all over the latest salvo coming out of Texas. He even coined the phrase, the Abbott Immigrant Express. Sir Charles, give us the latest.
Yeah, the Abbott Express is my favorite source of political entertainment nowadays. I am loving this. It's in full action, and it is the best form of transportation since the John Galt line. I'm loving seeing the Democrats melt down over this whole thing. Abbott and also I'll give credit to Arizona Governor Doug Ducey. They're shipping a lot of these illegal immigrants to DC and most recently to New York. Now, the mayors of these cities who support open borders policies are all in a tizzy about it. They're crying. They're begging the National Guard to help. Here's the thing. These people don't pay attention to what's going on at the border. They don't know what our authorities down there are going through. So Abbott is bringing the border to them. And I can't think of a better way to get them to wake up and see what's going on here. Now, they still might not care, but if Abbott were to expand this effort to include more blue cities, then perhaps more of these Democrats would be willing to hold the Biden administration accountable. You have a few Democrats that are already doing that, but most are not. And it should be a wake-up call to these people. What New York and DC are going through are what small border towns in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona are going through. Yet they are far smaller than New York City and DC and not as nearly well equipped to handle this influx. So maybe if they're going to support these policies, maybe they should start sharing the burden. 2,000
people in New York City, and that's blowing the tops off of the local officials there. Consider 200,000 coming across in Del Rio, Texas, and the little places that are just overwhelmed by this. So, Graham, how can DC and these two mayors, how can they even say this is a surge?
Well, the first thing is, if you declare your city to be a sanctuary city, then you don't have any right to complain about any number of illegal immigrants coming to your city. Surely that's why you called yourself a sanctuary city, to welcome them in. So, go ahead and welcome them in. I've often thought that one possible solution to our entire illegal immigrant problem is to simply say, look, if you've entered this country illegally, here's the deal. We will not ever come after you as long as you move to either New York or California and never step foot outside that state again. As long as you're there, we'll leave you alone.
That's a hard line. That's a hard line, Graham.
Well, the two least affordable states in the country, I think that would be a pretty hard life for them. Of course, they would be given all the benefits, everything for free until eventually one day, even the somewhat docile residents of those two states would actually, get to the point where, okay, this is enough. Once California's got, maybe 25, 30 million illegal immigrants there wandering around, then I think things would probably change. But to me, it's ridiculous. These
I'd like to know,
these mayors of these cities have no right to complain about this because this is what they wanted.
Are they providing monkeypox vaccinations to these folks in transit, because they've got outbreaks in both those spots? So I would just hope that some public health measures being undertaken.
Vaccination for what? We don't have vaccinations anymore, do we?
Monkeypox was so last week. I mean, there's a health crisis. There's a new virus out in China now, and so we should be thinking about that. Forget monkeypox. That was.
Well, hey, Andrew, you people are all happy with anybody and you accept a lot of immigrants in Canada. Can you guys do a better job, or do you think that people are going to say, hey, let's just start shipping them all over the place?
Well, the thing is that with our immigration system, everyone ends up in two places, Vancouver or Toronto. Nobody ever goes to Winnipeg. Nobody ever goes to Saskatoon or Nunavut. It's all just those two places. And those two places account for half the country's population. But to touch upon what Graham was saying about these mayors complaining, Eric Adams, he was saying the other day that, our system is under complete strain and we don't have enough resources to care for all these illegal immigrants. What do you think Texas is doing? Texas had to spend $700 million last year on illegal immigrants using the healthcare system. They had to spend $1.1 billion for illegal immigrants to access state services. So the government the state of Texas has to pay for all these legal immigrants to benefit from what the government offers. But one thing too,
wait a second, Andrew. Do they have to pay for those things, or do they choose to pay for those things?
Well, the government, obviously, Greg Abbott and his predecessors, they've chosen to pay for all these.
So there is another choice they could make, by the way, which is to not pay for those things.
Exactly, and that's the problem with illegal immigration. When you subsidize something, you get more of it. But one thing too about Greg Abbott, he spent $3 million to bus these illegal immigrants to those two cities. So I think that's worth pointing out to him. He's using taxpayer resource to make it for a political relations stunt, which I will concede was a funny stunt. It's my favorite political story so far of this year, but overall, it's still costing taxpayers money.
Andrew, is there an economic analysis that you know of that actually weighs the cost of keeping them in Texas versus shipping them out? Because there could be a cost. There could be an argument that it's actually cheaper for the taxpayers to send them over to New York, right?
Yeah, it's cost benefit analysis. But still, $3 million. That's still a lot of chunk of change. That's not going to achieve much. I guarantee you, this is not going to achieve anything differently at all, especially under this current administration.
It occurs to me that I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Graham.
Well, I was just going to say, it occurs to me that if only we had some kind of physical barrier, perhaps on the
or none at all. By the way,
for 4,000 people.
Let me just say,
4,000 people isn't going to change anything for except for those 4,000 people. It's not going to change the way Texas runs. It's not going to change the burden on DC or New York City. It's not going to change. But it's something to attract attention and get people to go, hey, looky there. This isn't as easy as it looks. And so why is Texas the only state, Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, the only states that have to put up with this? California doesn't care. They're all about sanctuary. So, Scott, I haven't heard from you much on this, and I know you have a whole different idea of what illegal immigration or immigration is all about. And so let's hear from you.
Before Archduke Franz Ferdinand was murdered, a person could travel across any border in this world with any amount of money and a firearm on their hip without inspection or delay. And that was a better world than the one we're in today.
Well,
yeah, but did they have massive welfare states that cost taxpayers billions of dollars that are being
and
utilized?
We shouldn't have those either.
Yes, there you go. I agree. I'm with Scott on that.
But also, I'm not in favor of the idea where you can establish that you are going to pay for one thing, and then that gives you entree to control other things. So, for instance, Andrew, you could say, well, if we have public funding of emergency hospital services like we do in the United States, you go to a hospital with a gunshot wound, they don't ask you for your insurance card before they treat you. They treat you. Well, does that then give them the right to say, well, we have to ban firearms because we're now paying for gunshot wounds? So it is used as a cudgel against other liberty and freedom. So I'd prefer to have none of it and be free and suffer the consequences and reap the benefits.
That's very interesting, Scott, because I've always been completely against open borders. And yet the libertarian in me says that no government should be able to tell you where you can and cannot live. But the reason why I'm against open borders in this day and age is precisely because what Andrew just touched on is because open borders would lead to the collapse of every country in the Western world because of our massive welfare apparatus, government welfare apparatus.
Right. I'm
with you on that, Scott. If we did away with that, if we did away with government obligations to give things to these people, to provide them with services, if we did away with those obligations, then I view the open borders question in a different light altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, during the 2008 presidential campaign, Ron Paul, whom I interviewed on Swamponomics TV recently, he was talking about how, in theory, he supports the border. When they had border funding back then, he voted for it. But he said that's not going to achieve anything until you completely alter, revise, or abolish the welfare state. And he's exactly right. As long as you have all these goodies from Texas, New Mexico, New York, California, whatever, you're not going to stop the flow of illegal immigration. Once you do that, then perhaps you'll put the plug in it. But overall, nothing is going to unfortunately change.
I might be willing to be more open to these immigration policies if we did get rid of the welfare state. But still, there's that part of me that does think that we should restrict immigration and we should have a system and a process for people to come here legally.
The problem, however, with if you're restricting immigration, you're going to have a complete fiscal calamity of the United States government, especially when it comes to entitlement funding like Social Security. Social Security is under complete strain, and you don't have enough workers, you don't have enough funds going in, you don't have enough taxpayer revenue going into that. If you have that under the current population, which is not growing at the rate that it should to sustain Social Security, then you're going to have that problem the next 20, 30 years of a system that's already facing bankruptcy.
Oh boy, that's a whole nother discussion. I don't think anybody on this panel thinks the Democrats got a taste of their own medicine. I mean, it certainly is something they've been pushing down the throats of Americans, living in border towns and rural communities. But will the stunt, and it is a stunt, but will this stunt change the direction of illegal immigration? Your guess is as good as mine, but hey, we'll keep you posted. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all, as well as Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to surf on over to libertynation.com or join us on the Member Zone, just $17.76 for the year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank Diorio. And thanks for joining us today. I'm Sarah Cowgill, filling in for Lisa K. Donner. And this has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.